All right, what's up, everybody? I'm doing my first YouTube live Q&A. Love to hear from you. I'm going to go over some of the top questions of the week, and I love getting the comments and the questions from the YouTube channel and sharing what we're seeing on the ground with all the new charts and data that's coming out on the real estate market. So if you have questions about the real estate market, definitely go ahead and drop them. The market is changing so fast. It is absolutely insane. So if you don't keep up with the data, it's you're going to be falling behind if you're a realtor, an investor, a buyer, or seller, all of that. So hey, Becky, thanks for being here. You are my first viewer ever on a live stream. I've never done this before, so bear with me. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and then I'm going to go over the top questions from the week, because I think it is important to ask the questions, not just look at the data, but continue to convert the conversation that we have going on. So let's see if I can share my screen here. If you can hear me, Becky, if you can respond, that would be great. Just drop a chat. So can you see my screen, Becky? All right, I can see my screen. So this should work. And thank you guys for watching. If you're watching, drop a comment. Let me know where you're at, where you're from, if you have any questions. So I'm just going to go over one of the top questions of the week that we saw was, can you really get 27% below asking price? Which is basically 2021 pricing, right? So the Fed came out and started raising interest rates in 2022, March of 2022. And we knew 6 to 8 months after they started hiking rates that we would start seeing the impact of that on the real estate market. So it became quite obvious that prices were going to go down. And so we started selling all of our rentals, our multifamily, everything, to get out as fast as possible. We know that, interest rates go up, asset prices come down. So the question is today, though, can you get 27% below asking price? The answer is yeah. I mean, there are specific pockets of the country that are around new construction communities. And I can tell you, new construction with the incentives is already down on average 22% from the peak period, which was, late 2022. So yes, you absolutely can get around 27%. You need to look at the days on market. Days on market is a really telling indicator. Now, if you're thinking you're going to get below 27% below asking price on a property that is brand new listing, it's really upgraded, it's in a hot neighborhood, it's in an A-class location, no, that's not going to be the case. But if you're talking about something that's been on the market for 90, 100 days, and they're getting no traction on it, you can actually look up and see what somebody owes for a mortgage online, by the way, by looking at tax records. So you can see what they bought the property for, and you can see their mortgage amount. You can see if they would even be willing or able to sell for 27% below the asking price. So that's a really good tip. You want to be looking at this stuff when you make the offer. You can look up all this stuff. It is public record, and it's really important. All right. Thanks, Becky. You said you can see it. You're watching from Montana. Awesome. Tell me where you're at if you guys are joining. Cheryl, heading to Tampa. Oh, it's my mom. My mom is watching my live stream. Guys, I think I've finally made it. I've made it. Thanks, Mom, for commenting. Number 3 fan over here. So I appreciate it. But yes, if it's long days on market, you can negotiate. If it's near new construction, you're going to get insane incentives. It may not be off of the price, although I recommend you do negotiate on price, not just the interest rate alone. The builders are trying to trick you to use the interest rate rather than the price. It's way better to get a lower price than a low interest rate. That is why the builders are offering those low interest rates. The issue with a low interest rate is that if you want to move in the next 5 to 7 years, you lose the value of them buying down that low interest rate. And that can cause a lot of problems. So if I'm talking with a new construction, company, I mean, I have had agents that have negotiated off $100,000, $200,000 off new construction. So if you're looking in the state of Florida, I can get you in touch with agents that actually know new construction. By the way, there's agents who specifically specialize in new construction. And it's not going to be necessarily the new construction homes that sell 27% below, not just them, but ones that are around the corner from them, because they have to compete with the new construction. And so they will slash their price if they're financially able to do so. A lot of them can't. They bought, FHA, VA, very low percentage down, and now they're underwater if they purchase in the vintage years of 2022, 23, 24. Generally, people who bought in those vintage years at peak retail prices are underwater at this point. So that was the first question. Bo, you told me to go live, man. You told me the formula of what to do. I'm here. This is amazing. All right, next question. Bo said I needed to get some charts in this, so maybe I'll bring some charts in this. Should the government restrict companies from buying single-family houses? What are we talking about here? Absolutely not. This is a capitalist country still at this from this perspective, the government shouldn't really be restricting any of this behavior. And I know people are upset because there are hedge funds and institutional buyers that bought up a lot of really good inventory that is affordable to the average person, right? They're buying stuff 2,000 square feet, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, under $400,000, turning them into rentals and driving up rent prices, driving up affordable home price. Like, they used to be affordable prices, and it's very frustrating. They only did this in certain pockets of the country, like Atlanta. Jacksonville was one of those cities. A lot of areas, in the Sun Belt, they purchased them and they just drove prices up higher because they saw population moving from the north and the west to the south, right? So they're trying to plan 10 steps ahead and gobble up that inventory. They started doing this in 2012 after the great financial crisis. And look, there's benefits from that, right? They gobbled up this extra inventory, they stabilized pricing, but it just became so speculative in nature that it's really an issue. Now we're seeing those same hedge funds start to sell those single family houses and actually start to be net sellers overall for those houses. But I'll tell you this, they still only own about 4% of the market altogether, these institutional investors. It's nothing. It's nothing. Most of these investment properties are owned by small mom and pops that own less than 10 units. Okay. So if there was a circumstance where they really bought so much more of the supply of houses, of single family houses, it might be something to look at. At this point, it's a nothing burger. 4% of the supply, after a decade of them, buying at the maximum level possible, tons of units. I don't think it's going to continue. They're not going to continue to buy at that rate. There's no reason for the government to step in and restrict the buying of single family houses. It just sucks that in some areas it just became a speculative boom. All right, so what do we got here? Impacting housing market. Could you say something about the market in Savannah, Georgia? I do know Savannah. I'm actually not that far away from there. And look, Savannah is kind of unique because it is a destination area. But we're not going to go over that on this call. That's actually going to be, I appreciate the question. If you want to actually email me, let me know what your situation is. I'll drop my email in the chat and you can just shoot me an email and I'll deal with that because we do have a lot of questions that we want to go over today. What are your thoughts on law rand price per acre in the Panhandle? Watch you all the time, learn a lot. Thank you. Oh, thanks, Andy. Appreciate you watching. If you have questions on raw land, I do have. So land is like a specialist niche. Okay, you're either going to be working with a developer or land specialist. I have specialists on this. So if you have questions for land people, I can get you to people who handle land. I know single family rentals. I know multifamily. I do know some about land, but that I'm not well versed enough to be able to give you advice or guidance on the land situation on the Panhandle. But I do know the people who do know the answers to the questions that you have, Andy. So just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. I love getting the emails and responses from you guys. All right. So what's the next question? Should we keep bailing out banks, funds, and builders? I mean, that was like a legitimate comment. So it makes no sense that we're going to spend taxpayer monies to bail out people for being incompetent, negligent, and taking massive risks, and that we have to socialize and give welfare to corporations because of their negligence. It makes no sense to me why we would bail any of them out. That's not part of capitalism. And so basically what we've been having is a form of massive welfare for corporations at the detriment to the middle class and everybody else. And basically the wealthy just are getting these government handouts, which is funny because, they're arguing, oh, we don't want to give out handouts to people who really actually need it. We need the bailouts for us getting in trouble, not doing the diligence that we need to do, all this type of stuff. It's unfortunate that happens. I don't like when the government steps in and bails them out. It creates a misaligned incentive where you can take an insane amount of risk and then get bailed out for your bad decision-making because you're basically like too big to fail. I think that was a big mistake in 2008 for a lot of these banks. And I think that it's not good. It's not a good use of taxpayer money and creates a lot of misincentives. So what's up, Grant? Grant, I was just on a call with you. Thanks for joining, brother. Appreciate it. Should I wait to buy? All right. This is a fantastic question, guys. If you are looking to buy real estate in Florida and you don't have to buy, but you want to buy, there's no problem looking. There's no problem getting pre-qualified. There's no problem talking with a real estate agent. But I will tell you every data point that we are seeing out there, and I'm not maybe my thumbnails look a little doomsday. I will tell you that every single person that I'm talking to in every, because I talk with real estate agents every single day, top agents, not crappy agents. By the way, 90% of agents in Florida are crap, and usually around most markets are just absolutely awful. The top 10% are phenomenal. They care about the customer. They do it. It's a full-time profession. I talk with them, the top ones across the state of Florida all the time, and it's getting worse every single month. So prices are coming down every month. There's slight inventory increase, not as much as we thought, because people are rage quitting. So they're listing their house, they can't get the price they want, and they just take their house off the market. They're going to relist it next year. Well, that's inventory that is, they do want to sell. It's just going to be delayed until next year. That's why we think Q2, Q3 of next year, we're going to see a massive amount of inventory come on. And the buyer demand will completely depend on what the Fed decides to do. Because you have to understand, Trump is going to nominate a new Fed chair, and it has to be approved by the Senate. He's going to nominate a new Fed chair May of next year, right? So Powell will be moving out. Can that Fed chair push interest rates lower, either by buying mortgage-backed securities or influencing by, reducing the overnight borrowing rate for banks? I don't know. I will tell you, if I was a buyer in today's market, the answer is yeah, I would wait. I would wait and watch. I think it is really smart. I think rent prices are coming down. There's areas around where I live where they're offering 3 to 4 months rent free. With a 12-month lease. I mean, that's a no-brainer, and they're willing to work with you and negotiate with you on the rent amounts because they need to fill units. So if you're in the state of Florida specifically, I can't talk about the Northeast. I would be careful if you're also in Austin, Texas. I do know that market quite well. I would be careful. We are seeing price decreases there. But yes, absolutely, you should wait to buy unless you find an insanely good deal that you just can't say no to. And that means like a unique product that will not pop up for usually another decade or two. Like, they're very rare. It's a specific location. It has a specific water view, something that's extremely unique. I think those properties always do well in every market, and they hold up their price. If it's not one of those unique type of properties, I would encourage you to continue rent and not buy. So love to hear what you guys are thinking. If you want to comment in the chat, let me know what you think. Are you waiting to buy? Are you looking to invest? Tell me where you are. Are you a seller? Why are you joining this channel, and why are you watching? I'd love to hear from you. Are Florida policies that are weakening public school vouchers potentially getting rid of property taxes? That comes from Cheryl Kenny, my mom. Okay, so this is a great conversation, and we don't have to agree on everything, right? So this is a channel where we just share opinions, and we'd love to hear from you on what you're thinking. But I will say to you that the property tax proposal from DeSantis is a problem. I do not think it is a good idea to get rid of property tax for primary homeowners in the state of Florida, because it's about $50 billion of revenue that is collected from property tax, and it goes to the counties. If you get rid of that county income, they're going to have to replace it. It doesn't, like, the money just doesn't go, like, disappear. Like, it has to come from somewhere. So they're going to propose, probably each county, a 6 or 7% sales tax to be able to shift that money somewhere else, to get it from somewhere else. Well, okay, so what are we doing? We're giving a benefit to owners who've already seen great price appreciation in their property. In the last 5 years, they've had 52% increase. And we're going to penalize renters because they're not seeing any benefit whatsoever by these property taxes, right? It's not investment properties. It's only on primary residences. And then we're going to add a consumer tax, sales tax, for the working renters, basically, right? Because renters, generally 69.2% of consumers are living paycheck to paycheck. Those are generally the renters. They're spending, up to 50% of their income on their rent. They're spending everything they have. So now you're double penalizing the working class with this proposal. I don't think it's a good idea. Obviously, nobody likes to pay property tax. I hate paying property tax too. It's just, what is the better system? I don't think this is a better system. And again, I think it's just giving a handout to owners and taxing the consumer, which I think is a really bad thing for the market. All right, so debating whether to buy now or wait it out. What is the forecast looking for Sunrise, Florida? Actually, let me pull up Sunrise. I might know about that area specifically. So let me go ahead and see if I can get you a little bit of info. And if you want to send me an email, I can drop that in there as well. Okay, so you are around Fort Lauderdale, is that correct? Sunrise Plantation. Just let me know. Jay Carlos, go ahead. Here, I'll drop my email in there. Send me more info. I will tell you, if you're in the state of Florida, generally, unless you're in Ocala is holding up a little bit better, though it is starting to get soft. The majority, if you're over in Fort Lauderdale, Yeah, I would probably wait, but I want to hear more about your situation. So send me a message. All right. So yes, the should I wait to buy? The answer is yes, you should wait. And I think unless you find that unique opportunity, what happens if Congress doesn't stop spending? So this is a huge one. We're obviously in a compounding debt cycle right now, passing $38 trillion on the deficit. It is a huge problem that not enough people are talking about. Basically, we're robbing from future generations by spending money today on random things, and there's no accountability of what we're spending money on. We're all hopeful that Doge was going to go in and get rid of certain, programs that didn't make any sense. They got rid of some of them and they cleaned them up, but there was no actual intent behind codifying what they were doing or going after the big items, which unfortunately and sadly are the social safety nets, right? Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, those type of programs, or looking into the defense budget. None of those things that were promised and talked about, we're going to be looked into it. So if we don't change path really quickly on our spending habits, we're going to have a massive debt crisis. We look at Ray Dalio and what he said, and he comes out almost every day and he's like, look, when you have a recession and you have a debt crisis, it's pretty much over. The system's going to have some sort of reset, because everybody's basically just not going to pay each other back, or the government, the Federal Reserve, will just have to come in and monetize all. They're just going to continue to print at such a rapid rate. We're going to see massive levels of inflation and try to inflate our way out of our debt crisis, which is never a good situation. And it's going to be really hard to hide your money and keep the value of your money. We're already seeing it this year with the depreciation of the dollar, almost 10%. I believe it's more than 10% at this point throughout the year. So it is absolutely a massive issue if Congress does not rein this in. I don't think they will. They're not going to do anything probably until the stock market and the bond market crack, where, basically other countries won't lend to us anymore. Of course, the Federal Reserve could just continue to buy our debt, manipulate things, but they can only do that for so long, where, we're just going to have this massive inflation spike down the line. So that would be bad. And so if Congress doesn't stop spending, where do you put your money? My opinion is not actually real estate. I would put it into stocks. I think, most people who, if they're going to print massive amount of money, all that money that comes in is just going to go into passive index funds most likely. And I think stocks will just continue to climb, and then it's going to supercharge basically the haves and the have-nots and in that kind of narrative until we're going to have some sort of system reset. And I know Gen Z and younger folks are really feeling the struggle right now. I feel for you guys. It's really difficult out there. It is not the same as it used to be in terms of cost. When you compare wages to housing prices and things like that, it is not the same type of a economy as it was just years ago. Almost everything is about 3 to 4 times more expensive on a relative basis to wages than it was, a few decades ago, which is really tough for people coming out. And, student loans and all that type of stuff, car loans, we're seeing repos happen left and right. And we're almost at crisis levels already, but it doesn't feel like we're in a crisis. But that's the numbers that we're seeing coming out. Okay, so this is one comment that I appreciate a lot. Thank God I didn't listen to the realtor to buy that house. And why are realtors so bad, and why do they lie? So look, they're all humans. We're all human. And, Charlie Munger says, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Like, realtors' incentives are to sell houses, and they make a commission off the house they sell. Not all realtors are bad. It just happens to be in the state of Florida and mostly around the country, even in California, 90% of realtors are part-time. They sell 1 to 2 homes per year. You hire your friend. If you do anything 2 times, you're not going to be the best at it. It's just not possible. You want somebody who's in it every single day, grinding every single day, in and out, and getting to the next level. So it's not that realtors are so bad. It's just you're not picking a good realtor. You're picking the crappiest realtor. You're not interviewing. You're not asking them any diligence questions. How many homes have you sold? What's your experience? Do you own real estate? How experienced is your mortgage lender, title company? All these things, all of this can be completely avoided if you just ask basic questions about their experience, look up their online reviews, get a couple references, and you can avoid having the bad experiences. Of course, you're going to have a bad experience. It's the same with every industry, right? 90% of accountants are pretty mid. They're not good. They're average for sure. And then there's the 10% on every field that's really good. Same thing with attorneys. It's with any service provider. It's up to you to protect yourself by asking the key questions and making sure that you find the best in the business that's going to be able to service you on the buy and the sell side. How do if anybody has questions about this on the realtor side, so people hate realtors. I get it. I hate them too. Actually, I got into the industry because my first real estate transaction was so bad. I made an offer on a listing. The listing agent never presented the offer to the seller, and so I went over and made the deal with the seller directly myself. And it was great. The seller was super nice. We made a deal on the spot. He was like, yeah, we never received the offer. We closed it. My buyer agent was okay. And I was so upset because I saw how much the agent made and they basically did nothing. Well, that was that was like the one sale that agent made in the entire year. Of course, they do it one time. They're not going to be good at it. Okay. Ooh, am I getting a donation? Bo, what are you sending me money? So anyway, so that's the feedback. Like, yes, listen to the top agents. If you need a top agent in your market, reach out to me. I know the questions to ask. I've been doing real estate for a decade now. I studied it in college. Like, this is what I do every day. I'm completely obsessed. As you know, I'm sending out all the new charts that come out every single week for real estate and market and finance. I used to be an investment banker for real estate, working at the big banks, moving those single family rental loans and the aggregators there and moving the needle there. Giving them collateral to be able to expand. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen the back end. I've seen the front end by the real estate side all the way to the end of what happens to the loan after it's originated to you and sold internationally. Basically, they're packaged with other loans and sold, so people get a little bit of cash flow from your payment. So if you have questions on any of this stuff, I'm happy to tell you. But I can tell you it's because those realtors are part time and you're not interviewing. So how do you buy stock when the market is at highs? Okay. This is not financial advice, but I'm telling you what I'm doing, okay? Because probably lying, good advice, but it's so scary and expensive right now. Yes, absolutely. But it's also cheap, Polio, Shaq. Uh, it's also cheap to buy protection. So you can buy a protective put on your portfolio if you want to buy today. And it can cost like 2% of your portfolio and protect your downside up to like 15% on a drop. So you can also, what you can do is you can dollar cost average in and you can buy a certain amount every week or every single month and hold the rest in treasuries until the time comes to buy. So there are ways to get in because honestly, we don't know where the market's going to go from here. We don't know when it's going to crack. It's impossible to tell when things will crack. You can do three things and you have to get three things right to be like a really good stock investor in terms of timing. You have to get the magnitude correct, you have to get the direction correct, and you have to get the timing correct. All three of those. If you don't get all three right, you're screwed. Okay. So it's a huge problem. So the best thing to do is exactly what Warren Buffett says, which is just buy the index. I'd probably buy the QQQ if it's me, because I have a 30-year time frame. It doesn't matter, the short-term volatility. You will experience volatility. There will be a point in time where your portfolio goes down 40, 50%. I mean, in the 1929, it dropped like 80%, right? So it does happen. And it takes time for it to come back. But if you're dollar cost averaging in or you buy a protective put on your portfolio, I do think that those are ways to minimize your risk. I think it's a good question. So any other questions in the chat? I think that is my last question for the week. Yes, that's my last question for the week. So if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and send them. I'll be hanging out here for another couple minutes before I gotta, you got my kids. So let me know. I'm just going through the chat right here to see what other questions you have. Are your contacts in Florida getting new calls from New York City? That's a great question, Becky. So yes, we're not seeing any new calls from NYC, not at this time. So a lot of the New Yorkers actually already moved down during the 2020, 2021, and 2022 time periods. We had a massive influx of people from the Northeast, which was phenomenal, right? Because they're coming with cash. Everything looks super cheap to them. They just gobble everything up. They move really quickly. They're New Yorkers. They make the decision. They're doing it. And they're fun to work with, and I used to work in New York on 60 Wall Street. So, it's my people, right? I really enjoy spending time with the New Yorkers. However, they like to negotiate. They want it their way. The little details are really important and all that's fine. And so we service them really well. But recently, talking with the agents, we have not got any calls from New York City. The people who left already left. I think people kind of saw this coming, unfortunately. This is not somebody that it's like you have like two bad options to vote for, in my opinion. So it's I don't know how they find these candidates, and it's really frustrating. So my experience is you must have an agent experience with a specific location you're interested. Location is central. Cheryl, I would say that's somewhat true, but if you get an agent that is a really top agent that does, 60, 80 homes a year, even if it's not your area, they're so smart and they know what they're doing. I would rather look for production than where somebody lives. That's just my personal opinion. If I was going to go hire somebody to sell my house, I wouldn't hire the neighbor down the street who sold like 5 houses in my neighborhood. I'd go find the person that has the most experience just selling real estate at that price point that I'm in, and I wouldn't care really where they live. And I want to know what their marketing process is to sell a house and what the results are on the houses that they sold, because location is great and you do want someone to be local if you can, but I would prefer experience over location, even on selling the houses. I wouldn't even care if they care about, do they know about my country club? Do they know the golf course? Do they know that? I mean, that is helpful, but it's not what's going to sell the house. The agent's level of marketing, their experience in negotiating, their ability to price correctly and communicate with you is likely going to be the number one thing. The market in the villages, price adjustments. Yeah, the villages are seeing price adjustments. Becky, I've got a lot of friends that do real estate down there, and they're slow. This is one of the slowest years. We're 30% down in closed sales from 2021. So it is a brutal market for real estate agents. It's a brutal market for sellers right now, and my suspicion is that it's going to get worse every single month. We're seeing a kind of like a step down in sales price of about 0.7% per month, and that's a lot. That is a lot. So we think that the prices will continue to go. Now, of course, there's going to be pockets of Florida and pockets that just are going to be doing better than other areas for one reason or another. However, when I'm talking about Florida, I'm just talking about the overall market. It is kind of stepping down at this point. Inventory is rising, and there's no guarantee that next year will be better than this year, even if we see rates go down, which interestingly, rates are actually moving up about 20 basis points after they announced the Fed cut, because, we're seeing an issue with the job market, which should decrease rates. But then we're also seeing the impact of the tariffs impacting the CPI report up to 3% inflation. So it's a big issue because the Fed's mandate is employment and inflation, but they have high inflation than they want. They want 2%. It's at 3%. And then the employment is starting to crack. We saw that Challenger survey come out. It was like the worst report since 2003 for the announced layoffs that are coming up, because companies are tightening their belt. They can kind of tell that the consumer is tapped out at this point. So, all right, for the folks in the chat, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to give you any advice. I respond to about 5 to 10 people today from this channel, which I love. Either looking for a real estate agent. Hey, what do you think about this? I don't expect anything in return. If you do need a good realtor, I will refer you to one. But if you just like have a general question on how something works, I'm happy to answer it. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I'm happy to share what I think. And of course, always double check anything I say, in case there's something local that might be different. Melody Wright is a friend of mine now. She's been on the channel and we message quite a bit. She's fantastic. And I love Melody. So Becky, go back and watch my interview with Melody from like 3 weeks ago. We all communicate with each other behind the scenes. There's a group of us that watch the data closely and talk about it. And we all have different opinions and different spins on it. But what I like about Melody is she actually drives the areas and will go see, is there anybody living there? Is there, you can drive into communities in Florida where there's just like complete empty houses. Like, who's the next buyer for these? So I really like her because she puts in the legwork. She also worked at the big banks and she unwound some of the portfolios there. She has access to the servicer data. So she is just a phenomenal resource and has the inside information of what's coming up, right? She is like 6 months ahead of everybody else because she can see the servicer data that other people don't necessarily have access to it. Vital Signs, thanks. Welcome. Great channel. Florida's unique. Can't compare it to the other market. Bingo. Right. Yeah. So Florida and Texas, we can probably compare a lot more closely. It's not exactly. Florida, I believe, is a little bit worse than Texas. But yes, the Northeast is completely different, though I will say I do think that the Northeast is going to slow down next year, and they're going to start feeling what we felt, about a year and a half ago, where it's like the buyers just cannot afford. There's a true affordability crisis in this country, and the consumer is loaded up with debt. And I think that's really going to slow things down. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. I'm going to intend to be on here every Friday to answer questions that you guys have in the chats, the most popular comments and questions that are there, and do a little summary at the end. And I appreciate you. If you need any help, shoot me an email, and appreciate you guys supporting the channel. It means a lot to me. Thanks so much.